What's up fighting fans? Tibz from the Fight IQ channel. Today we're coming back for another episode of the Fight IQ show. We are back for a weekend preview. As you know, this weekend we'll have the UFC Paris. So I decided to dedicate this preview entirely to it, to shine some light on my home country a bit. I'm gonna pick my top 3 fights, and after that I'll also recap the rest of the card. So let's get ready to rumble! Number 3, I picked Nora Cornolle versus Jacqueline Cavalcanti. It will be in the prelims and it will be in the Bantamweight division. I hesitated about which fight I will put number 3, but I think I made the right choice. First of all, it's a rematch. Both are really talented prospects and are close to being ranked in the top 15 of the Bantamweight division. They first met at FFA Challenge 2 in July of 2021 for what was Nora Cornolle MMA debut and Cavalcanti's second pro fight. After a really close fight where both fighters rocked their opponents, Cavalcanti got the win, inflicting to Cornolle her only loss to this day. Nora Cornolle is 34 years old, she's 8-1, 6 wins by way of knockouts. This is kind of her second career, she's well known in France, highly decorated in Muay Thai, multiple time national champion, European champion, and got a silver medal at the World Games in 2022. She decided to go for a new challenge and to reach the highest level in MMA. After losing her pro debut, she never lost again, turning into a finishing machine. 8 fights in only 2 years, 7 finishes, 6 KOs and a rear naked choke. That includes a win over Hasna Gabber at UAE Warriors 38 in March of 2023, just before joining the UFC, a dominating victory over Jocelyn Edwards for her debut in September of 2023, and a beautiful finish over Melissa Mullins last April. She should have fought the legend Germaine de Randamie this coming weekend, but the former featherweight champ had to withdraw due to an injury. She will now try to avenge her only loss to Jacqueline Cavalcanti. Cavalcanti is 27 years old, 7-1, 3 wins by way of knockouts. Also a decorated striker, competing in Muay Thai and K1 before fully transitioning to MMA. She was WKO European champion in 2018 and made her MMA pro debut the same year, winning via TKO on the Portuguese regional scene. After 3 years without competing in MMA, she faced Nora Cornolle for one of her toughest fights to date and won via decision. In March of 2022, she competed at the PFL Challenger Series, losing via split decision in a close fight versus Martina Jindrova. But she stayed active with 2 other fights in 2022, 2 TKOs. In April of 2023, she competed for the LFA Bantamweight title versus Melissa Crowden and won via unanimous decision. That attracted the eye of the UFC and competed at the UFC Paris in September of 2023 to make her debut. She won via unanimous decision versus the French Zara Fayen, displaying her striking skills. It took a while before we saw her in action again. It was last August and she won via split decision versus Josiane Nunes, even though a unanimous decision would have seen more right in my opinion. She's now stepping in on short notice to replace the Randamie against a former foe. I am really intrigued by this fight. Both have evolved so much since the first time they met, and they both will have their third fight in the UFC. I expect an excellent striking contest. They're gonna give hell to each other. I am giving an edge to Cornolle. She switched to bantamweight directly after the first fight. Both met at featherweight last time, and she seems to really have mastered that weight cut and kept that incredible power she has since the Muay Thai days. I expect her strikes to have more impact than the one of Cavalcanti, and she can also mix it up with some wrestling. I think it will be really close though. Cavalcanti is really resistant and durable, but I expect Nora to get the decision win, extending her winning streak at home. Number 2, I picked Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis. It's the main event in the lightweight division. I'm pretty sure we'll never see 5 rounds in that matchup. 2 guys will give it all and throw caution to the wind. Let's start with the Brazilian. Renato Money Moicano is 35 years old, 19, 5-1, 10 wins via submission. He started his career at the featherweight in 2010 and after 8 wins and 1 draw, he caught the eye of the UFC where he signed in 2014. Started with 3 consecutive wins, including one over Jeremy Stephens, but got his first career loss handed to him by Brian Ortega in July of 2017, getting choked out in what was the fight of the night. After 4 other fights at featherweight, including wins over Calvin Kattar and Cobb Swenson, and losses against Jose Aldo and the Korean Zombie, he decided to move up to lightweight in 2020. Since then, he's 6-2 with finishes over Damir Azovic, Jay Herbert, Alexander Hernandez, Brad Riddle, and Jalen Turner in his last appearance last April. He seems more comfortable at 155, he has more power, his boxing is crisp, and his grappling really slick. He will need to be on his A game if he wants to beat the God of War. Benoit Saint-Denis is 28 years old, 13-2, 1 no contest, 13 finishes. Indeed, BSD has a 100% finish rate, comfortable on the ground, 9 submissions, and being more and more dangerous with his striking, 4 KOs. He started his pro career in 2019 as a welterweight, competing and winning 4 times from February to October. He signed then with Brave CF, and after a first fight overturned to a no contest, he finished his 4 next opponents. He signed at the UFC after that, making his debut in October of 2021 versus Eliseo Zaleski, a bit more than 2 years after his debut. Unfortunately, his first UFC fight was a nightmare, getting beaten up by his opponent, but never giving up, only conceding the win at the decision. Fun fact, his opponent got positively tested to banned substances after that, but the result never got overturned. Since then, BSD moved down to lightweight, quickly turning into one of the biggest prospects in this division. 5 consecutive wins from June of 2022 to November of 2023, with on his hit list Niklas Stolze, Gabriel Miranda, Ismael Bonfim, Thiago Moises, and Matt Frevola. He got a big opportunity to make a leap in the rankings by facing Dustin Poirier last March. The Diamond finished him with a right hook in the second round, showing he was not willing to leave his spot yet. BSD has now to show the world that it was just a mistake and that he shouldn't have fought Poirier with a staph infection. In that matchup, I do think BSD has the advantage. He has more power, his striking is becoming really good, especially his kicks. And even though Moicano has a great jiu-jitsu, I think BSD can defend it. The Frenchman has been criticized after his last fight, some saying he was not as good as it seemed, or that he was making excuses with the staph infection. And in MMA, you are only as good as your last performance, so he will have to prove them wrong. If he respects Moicano by paying attention to his grappling and his boxing and not going into a complete brawl, I expect him to get a KO in the second or third round. He is really extremely powerful for this weight class. And number 1, Nassourdine Imavov vs Brendan Allen, co-main event middleweight clash. Best fight on this card for me, at least the one with the most at stake. Both on a good streak and heading to a title shot in the near future. Imavov is 28 years old, 14-4, 1 no contest, 10 finishes. He is ranked number 4 in the middleweight division, a lot of big names on his resume. He entered the UFC in 2020, beating Jordan Williams by a unanimous decision for his debut in October. After a loss by majority decision in February of 2021 against Phil Oz, he started to gain momentum. 3 consecutive wins, TKOs against Jan Heinisch and Elmed Shabazian, and a dominating performance over Joaquin Buckley in Paris in September of 2022. In January of 2023, he had a 5-round battle versus Sean Strickland, conceding the win at the decision against the future champion. But since then, he is unbeaten. A no contest versus Chris Curtis after an accidental clash of heads in June of 2023, a dominating win over Roman Dolidze last February, and a finish over former title contender Jared Cannonier last June. Imavov's ambitions are clear, going to a title shot in 2-3 fights maximum. but for this he has to go through the American phenom Brendan Allen. Brendan All In Allen is 28 years old, 25-4, 19 finishes. He has a huge amount of experience. IMF World Champion in 2015. He's training at Kilcliff, one of the most reputed MMA gym in the world, with people like Gilbert Burns, Michael Chandler, Impact Asanganai, etc, etc. He's pro since 2015, quickly joined the LFA in 2017 with a record of 6-1 at the time, only finishes. He became the middleweight champion in 2018, beating Tim Hiley with a rear naked choke, his signature move, in September. UFC invited him to the Dana White Contender Series, facing Aaron Jeffrey in July of 2019. He finished him in the first round with another rear naked choke, getting his UFC contract. Since then, 14 fights, only 2 losses to Strickland and Chris Curtis, 8 finishes, and currently on a 7 fights win streak, including on his hunting board Andre Muniz, Bruno Silva, Paul Craig, and Chris Curtis last April. Allen is currently ranked number 8 in the middleweight division and wants to keep climbing the rankings to get a shot at the belt. I think they're both one of each other's biggest challenge to date. Allen's grappling will be really dangerous for Imavov, who never fought somebody with that level of skills in that domain. On the other hand, Allen is having issues against elite striker, as it was the case versus Strickland and Curtis twice, even though he won the last time. That's why I will give an edge to Imavov in that fight. I trust he will succeed to keep the fight on the feet. Allen is dangerous on the ground, but not sure his wrestling will be enough to take the Frenchman down and keep him there long enough to get a finish. Imavov will make sure for it not to happen and will dominate the fight with his striking for 3 rounds, getting the win at the decision. The whole card is pretty good, to be honest. Prelims have some interesting fights, except the Aileen Perez vs Daria Jeleznyakova and Kutelaba vs Urslan, for which I don't care too much. Opener is pretty dope. Oki vs Duncan, 2 Contender Series alumni. I think it will be a great striking contest and pretty sure we'll start the night with a finish. Then we have Taylor Lapillus vs Vince Morales, the experimented Frenchman and local legend, facing the American who stepped in on short notice. I expect Lapillus to get the win. The skill set he displayed versus Basharat and Stamen was really impressive. We have also Klein versus Roberts, which might be really entertaining too. I think Klein will get the KO in that one. Undefeated French light heavyweight prospect Oumar Sy will have his second UFC fight versus the experimented Dawood Jung, who stays on 3 losses in a row. It feels like they don't want to rush Oumar and want to build him up. I think he will get the finish in the first round. The main card will start with the technical French striker Fares Ziam, who will try to extend his 3 fights winning streak versus Matt Frevola. Tough fight for both guys. I expect it to be close and to go to the limit. Let's see if Ziam can keep it a clean fight and not brawl with Frevola. Morgan Charrière will try to get his second UFC win, facing the Brazilian Gabriel Miranda. A really dangerous grappler for Charrière. 16 wins by submissions for the Brazilian, but Charrière's striking is really impressive, and after losing a split decision last time, I'm pretty sure he will do everything to get a finish. Jousset vs Battle, one of the best fights on that card in my opinion. Tough test for Jousset. Brian Battle has proved himself already, winning the Ultimate Fighter and being 5-1 inside the organization. He has good submission skills, still a bit wild in his striking, and that's where Jousset can get to him. Jousset is really disciplined, training at City Kickboxing with one of the best strikers in the world, Adesanya. I think he is one of the best prospects in the welterweight division at the time. I think he's one of the most talented prospects in the welterweight division at this moment, and I see him coming out of this one victorious. And finally, William Gomis vs Joanderson Brito. This one is tough also. I question a bit this matchup, to be honest. It seems like UFC is punishing Gomis, maybe about his late withdrawal from the Jean Silva fight due to his weight cut that went pretty bad. Gomis is young, 27 years old. He's 13-2, 3 wins at the UFC, but it seems a pretty big gap. Brito has already 6 UFC fights, 5 wins, 5 finishes, and against tough guys like Andre Fili, Jonathan Pierce, and Jack Shore. I fear that Gomis will have a hard time handling Brito's aggressivity and power. If he manages to get the win though, he will prove that he's close to be one of the top 15 featherweights. And we're done here. Now you know what to watch this weekend, guys. As usual, punch those like and subscribe buttons, it helps me a lot. I want to see your thoughts and your picks in the comments. Hit me on Telegram, on Discord, Instagram, whatever you're on. Until then, enjoy the fights. I'll see you next week.
Oh, now they call me, I seen them. All of those times getting severed. I told them all I can let up. They get on top of me.